Welcome back, WarCraft grognards. Is that what I'm going to be calling people here? I guess I might as well. I started to do this in the Let's Plays because I was playing kind of WarCraft 3 and it made sense there. Anyway, this is not Warcraft 3 is not why I am here today. Actually, that is World of Warcraft, and that is the PTR. Because if you didn't know, the new patch 11.2 is being tested on the PTR right now, and the patch is all about Karesh. And setting aside things like wasting Karesh, all of Karesh, in a single patch again, when it could easily hold up a whole expansion. Like, this is another time that a whole world is being used for a patch, for a single patch. I do not like that how they seem to just run through those ideas, through those huge concepts, and just getting them out so quickly. Like Battle for Azeroth, it had like 3 expansions all put together. Like in Battle for Azeroth, they had like 3 expansions at once. They had like the whole South Seas line. They had Jara. They had N'Zoth. Like it felt like 3 separate expansions, all like chocked forced together, and they really run through those really huge ideas very quickly, which each of those could really hold an expansion of its own. And here we are doing Karesh, which is a whole other world that is being done through in a patch. And in fact, in my game, in my TTRPG that we are running with my friends, one of the friends has taken up Karesh, and it's like it's his domain. He makes the stories there, the characters there, and more is happening there. And of course, it's not because he has been doing it for a while before this came out. Doesn't agree in a lot of ways with what he's been doing. And it's par for the course. We accept that. I've accepted that since I've done that Draenor map years ago, and then almost immediately Blizzard announced Worlds of Draenor. So we accept that things are not going to be the same, and in our game, what we made up is canon, and then maybe we adapt some minor parts. And today we are going to talk about the lore reveals from the PTR, and I am looking right now at a Reddit post which summarizes many of the finds from various quest lines, various like books and PC dialogue blurbs. It sums up all the really major things that we found on the PTR about Karesh. I will talk about how it differs from what we've been doing in our game, from what we've been doing with the Karesh and this sort of stuff. So we'll go through all the major things and my feedback on them, be it positive, negative feedback. So without further ado, let's get to it. This is a Reddit post, but I have like verified most of these things, checked it with other sources, with like screenshots of what happened to on the PTR, and I think it's for the most part it checked out. So I will not be like looking into every little detail. If I was wrong, if the Reddit post is wrong about something, please do feel free to correct me, and I will not be able to go back to the video and like undo what I said, but I will be able to like make a comment and said like, okay, that was wrong. I didn't notice that. But the first big reveal: Karesh was destroyed about 100,000 years ago. This makes them the oldest mortal civilization that we know about. And with an edit, the writer, the author of the post, said he went back to the exact text, and it says it's been hundreds of thousands of years. I haven't found this text. I found an NPC who says that NPC who says that it has been 100,000 years or more, but he lost track. So this is obviously a very huge number. Like, this is my main point of content, my main point of contention here is that, like, once again, writers have no sense of scale. 100,000 years ago is like an astronomically huge number. Like, just even with the Eredar, when we were hearing things like they were corrupted apparently 25,000 years ago, even with the Eredar, and I saw elsewhere that someone said that it was like 13,000 years ago. I'm not sure if that was a retcon or if I missed something for years. But anyway, either number, 13,000, 25,000 years ago, that is already a huge number. Like the Night Elves, when we first hear about the Night Elves in Warcraft 3, they have been there for 10,000 years. That is still a huge number. That is longer than the whole history of human civilization here on Earth. But it's kind of like the more or less the same time frame as Atlantis was supposed to be, allegedly. It's not, because Atlantis is of course not a real thing, because some people believe it, I know. 10,000 years is already a huge number, but it's like more acceptable because it's like a little closer to the numbers that we know from real history, and it has like this mythical justification for using that kind of number. Then Eredar use a number like 25,000 years ago. They have to outdo the last huge number they used. And 25,000 years, it's already a huge number. What happened on Earth 25,000 years ago? Like, we don't know what happened because it was like one of the ice ages or even the interglacial periods. We don't really know what was happening there. Like, when was the Toba catastrophe? The Toba catastrophe was 74,000 years ago, so the catastrophe that supposedly almost wiped out the human race. 25,000 years ago, it's not as far as, but it's still like we start to get like into like geological numbers. And now Karesh was destroyed over 100,000 years ago. That crosses the line of the Toba catastrophe. Like, this is the line in which this is the timeline in which whole species in the real world die. Like in Warcraft, the centaurs are supposed to be like, at least the old centaurs before they introduced new centaurs in Dragon Isles. The old centaurs were supposed to be like 1,300 years old, like the whole race. And that was also, writers have no sense of scale in the other direction, giving us a way too low number. But here, this 100,000 years, it's just unnecessary. You don't need to overshoot the next number. In our game, we had it so that Karesh was destroyed 1,000 years ago. We actually gave it a smaller number. We made with Karesh, it was destroyed only within like a more reasonable time frame. And we have a few characters, ethereals, or the race we invented that we called corporeals, that are like these still fleshy survivors of Karesh, but who are still like wasted, very thin, frail looking, and they basically looking like Githyanki from D&D. Because I based the idea originally on Githyanki and Githzerai. So these corporeals basically look like Gith. And I've made that idea like 10 years ago or more. So that it's way older than most of the Gith you probably know, like Baldur's Gate 3. But anyway, we made it so it was only 1,000 years ago. It could have been 1,000, could have been like 2,000, 10,000. We were thinking about something like 10,000 when we were talking about it with the friend who's doing Karesh. But we settled on this 1,000 because it felt like a more reasonable number. But instead, like 100,000 years ago, that's just unnecessary. It's not wrong. I don't blame any writers for making this decision. So it's fine, but I just personally don't like it. I think it's way too big a number, and the friend who's doing Karesh also agreed that it's way too big a number. Now we are getting also a backstory on Xal'atath. If you remember the video on Xal'atath that I made some time ago, I was showing her as a Void Revenant. Turns out that Xal'atath wasn't always that Void Revenant. Turns out that she had a past before that. And Xal'atath was a mortal whose world was also destroyed by the Menches at some point in time before Karesh. So even older time. Maybe she came from like... No, she couldn't have come from Aman'Thul because Dimensions didn't destroy Aman'Thul. Maybe Aman'Thul woke up like 65 million years ago, so make it an even bigger number. Anyway, she was a mortal who was also destroyed by Dimensions at some point in time before Karesh. Xal'atath basically became Dimensions' Silver Surfer. She is his harbinger and would aid him in destroying worlds. This part I kind of like. Although I always imagined Sargeras as more of a... what's his name? Galactus. I always imagined Sargeras as more of a Galactus of Warcraft, because he's been like going around... This is a thing... Now we're going to go into the deep Marvel Comics lore that you haven't seen in like MCU movies. Because in the Marvel Comics, there was a line called Ultimate Marvel. And in that line, Galactus wasn't just destroying worlds because he was hungry. Galactus was going around destroying worlds that were housing the souls of Celestials. He was trying to kill those Celestials before they could emerge. And this is kind of similar to what Sargeras was doing. He was killing the planets with the world souls before the world soul could raise and be corrupted by the old gods. So it gave, like Galactus, and later gave Sargeras a kind of a more reasonable motivation for their actions. So they're not just going around destroying things because they're just angry or hungry. It appears that like Dimensions is maybe more like the main 616 Marvel Universe Galactus, and Sargeras is like the ultimate Galactus. So Sargeras is going around and destroying worlds to prevent them from being corrupted, and Dimensions is just eating worlds to eat their power. So maybe is that kind of implication, but I do like the idea of Xal'atath being this Silver Surfer type of character. Before they made Silver Surfer female, some people were really angry they made Silver Surfer female in the new Fantastic Four movies. Some people were really angry about it. I really don't get, like, what's the big deal that the character is now female? Like, it can still be Norrin Rad. Just flip the genders of the family that he lost, and everything is the same. It's the same character, same story. The gender really isn't that important to the character, but that is a huge diversion. That is I really strayed from the topic. But anyway, I do kind of like this idea. Next one. Karesh had a priesthood. I don't know why this guy doesn't do the little apostrophe in Karesh. Karesh is supposed to have this apostrophe. Was the apostrophe key too far for you? Anyway, Karesh had a priesthood called the Oracles that communed with his world soul. They call him Karesh the Merciless. They are part of the main quest in the epilogue post-raid. A small part of Karesh still lives. In the dungeon journal, we learn that the last piece of him is in the Dark Heart, which is fueling Dimensions' manifestation. Yeah, this is something that I have seen through like various snippets, like the dungeon journal, or from like various like dialogue boxes that I have seen from the PTR. That we have seen it speculated that Karesh had I think it was confirmed even before the expansion properly started that Karesh actually had the world soul. Ages ago, I did not imagine Karesh as having world soul. like not every world in the setting has to have a world soul. I like that about the Chronicle Volume 2, when they showed us the history of Draenor, and it didn't Draenor didn't have its own world soul, but the Titans still care. The Titans still try to help it. Agramor, namely, for in the case of Draenor, and not every world has to have a world soul. So I wouldn't have made Karesh to have a world soul, but the friend who is doing Karesh, he did decide to also independently decide to make Karesh have a world soul. So that's fine, and apparently piece of this world soul remains in the Dark Heart. And that's part of what Xal'atath has been doing. Maybe she'll like trying to restore Karesh in some way. We don't know a lot about her motivation yet. That is fine. I have no real feedback on that, but it's also a huge lore revelation that this piece of the world soul still lives in there. Looks like they call him the Merciless because the pre-Devouring, they were based in a place called the Merciless Wastes and used the Reshi ribbons to make it a garden. Now, this is something that I also have seen in different posts. There is this myth about the facets of Karesh, a myth that talks about like the origins of life on Karesh. I don't know if I should be reading the whole thing here, because it would be kind of long on the video, but like the basic gist of it is that, like, give you some brief moments, like when Karesh emerged from the great dark beyond, there was nothing but sand and wind. The air was rank and no seed found purchase within the soil. No creature scampered upon the sand or took flight upon the wing. Karesh was barren and alone. This was the beginning of Karesh, and so it shall be his end. Karesh has grown more generous, but merciless Karesh remains to test us. The idea is that this was a very rough, very difficult world, so its inhabitants call it merciless because it was always had deserts and wastelands. It was always difficult to live there. And it eventually, Karesh was not happy with his isolation. He longed for the company of beasts. He desired the sight of green and blue upon the land. He wanted the diversity of sensation. So Karesh brought forth the wilds, nature in all its abundance and danger, beasts of fur, fin, and feathers, plants that grow and creep and spread through fruit, seed, and bramble. The gift of life and freedom was the first and most precious of the gifts that Karesh bestowed upon us. So there is this very, very mythical idea they put in one of the books you can read in the game. That I do also like the sense that it was a different world, that has a different kind of climate, and it gave rise to a different culture. So its inhabitants saw the world in a different light. We see Azeroth as a motherly type who nurtures us because there is a lot of life, a lot of diversity, and Karesh was a very different world, much more difficult. And we don't know what Argus was like to the Draenei in canon before it was corrupted. Maybe it was too young at the time to really influence them. Or maybe Argus used to be very scholarly too, just like the Eredar would become. I like this symbiosis between the world and its inhabitants. In my version, we have a very close symbiosis between the world and its inhabitants, where to the point that if the world dies, all the life that is on the world also dies, because the world soul is the world. That's why when the world soul emerges as a titan, it doesn't break open the world and hatch from it physically, because it would, by killing all of its inhabitants in that way, it will also kill itself, because the world is tied very innately to that life of these people upon it. That was the idea. And it isn't very clear if it's the same here, but it kind of there is at least a philosophical symbiosis between the world soul and its inhabitants. Brokers, this is a big one. Brokers are not dead ethereals. There forms of special containment suits to let them live in the Shadowlands. They are still alive and just fled to the Shadowlands instead of the Great Dark. This is a big one, because back in Shadowlands, people were speculating about the brokers and where they came from. And the most common idea at the time was that the brokers were like souls of dead ethereals who went to the Shadowlands. And I like the idea of brokers having this mercantile afterlife. Like in the landscape where the Shadowlands looks like it does in canon, like it makes sense that there would be an afterlife for the more mercantile souls, and that it would make brokers, and it would make those brokers, those mercantile people traveling around the Shadowlands, that they would have come from those mercantile souls. And I liked that idea at the time, but in my reboot, in my TTRPG, we have actually made brokers to be a faction of ethereals. We have done this before, of course, before this came out. So we have made the brokers to be actually just a faction of ethereals who took different forms, not specifically to fit them into Shadowlands, but there are a few different forms ethereals can take that we made up. There are the basic standard ethereals. There are ethereals that take these metal cages, form of this cloud encased in this metal cage, and because this metal cage is magnetized, armor clings better to this form, so the warriors are more often, the ethereal warriors are more often using that metal form. And there are different forms. The brokers are this more quasi-religious form, that group organization that wants to recruit new ethereals. It takes people with that mercantile disposition and it transforms them into new ethereals, and these mostly become the brokers, because they're like, if we don't do this, our race will eventually go extinct, because we die out and we don't return, we don't reproduce. So we have to recruit new people, and this faction became the brokers. Meanwhile, there is also, because they can't reproduce, if you see a child at ethereal on Karesh, you should know that is not a child, because that is another form of ethereal we made up. And these ethereals took up more compact, smaller forms to be better thieves. So if you see a child on Karesh, in our version, that is actually someone who is probably a thief. So now we like the idea that the brokers are just ethereals, and just a new type of ethereal. And now this is a big one, another big one that me and my friend didn't like. There was the revelations about Nexus-King Xal'atath. Remember the Nexus-King Xal'atath, the guy we killed in Netherstorm? Turns out he made a pact with Dimensius all the way back then. And now, in the patch, he is resurrected, and he is the leader of the Shadow Guard and the raid boss. The guy that we defeated in 3 or 5 people. He's now a raid boss. The same was true about Dimensius, but they explain how that works with Dimensius. I don't know if it's said in this exact post, but they explained about Dimensius in that Dimensius, when Dimensius was defeated on Karesh 100,000 years ago, he was scattered into tiny pieces. He wasn't completely destroyed, but he was scattered into tiny pieces, and one of those tiny pieces is what we fought in Outland. They don't have the same justification for Xal'atath. And what's even stranger about Xal'atath is that the guy who was allegedly fighting the Void all this time, we thought he was this well-intentioned extremist, someone like Illidan or the Illidari, who's using the Void to fight the Void. Turns out that was all bullshit. Turns out that he was serving Dimensius all this time, that he was gathering power to resurrect Dimensius all this time. We don't like this. Is this kind of a retcon? Could be explained by saying that that always was true, that he was just pretending all this time, but it is kind of a retcon, and they're just changing him from us. This is something that, like in Doctor Who, and now again with the huge diversion in Doctor Who, they recently changed Omega, the first Time Lord, from a guy who was just angry at Time Lords for abandoning him, and turns out they didn't abandon him; they just thought he was dead. So there is a conflict. There is a real conflict caused by people having different views of the world, not knowing some things. There was a real conflict. And then they changed Omega recently to now be just a big stupid CGI monster that eats Time Lords. Something similar happens here. Xal'atath had like nuanced motivations, and we had to get rid of this nuanced motivations to make a new raid boss. It's kind of similar to what happened in the Burning Crusade, when like Illidan and Xal'atath lost all the nuance and just became loot piñatas. Something similar is happening to Xal'atath here, who was ironically created in the Burning Crusade. Me and my friend, we didn't like that either. We preferred when Xal'atath was a well-intentioned extremist who just went too far. He was still a villain, but we can understand kind of his motivation, and we understand how he got there. And those are far more compelling villains, whether it's Doctor Who or whether it's World of Warcraft. Now, next part. This is going to be big. When Dimensions invaded, a group called the Rabble researched unorthodox methods to defeat him. Locus-Walker and Venari were both members of this order. The guy is again missing the apostrophe in Venari. Dude, do you not have an apostrophe on your keyboard? Anyway, the Rabble have these special wraps, the Reshi ribbons, which hold great power. This is basically what the ethereals are made of. Xal'atath learned about them decided to betray Dimensions, using the wraps in a plan to kill him and escape. She worked with the Rabble to do this. The Reshi wraps are turned into the new cloak. So with this basis of what the ethereal bindings, the mummy-like bindings, are made of. Xal'atath is the one that turned the ethereals into beings of energy using the Reshi wraps. The Rabble let her do this and made the choice for their people, then covered it up. We're still going because this is all part of one big thing. The Rabble destroyed Karesh, not Dimensions, as part of a plan to kill him. Basically sacrificed their world and world soul to permanently kill a Void Lord, thinking they had no other option to stop Dimensions. But the Rabble screwed up, and in the end only fragmented Dimensions across the Great Dark, what I told about. The one we meet in Outland was one such fragment. Xal'atath, under the guise of hunting Dimensions, was basically gathering these fragments with the ultimate goal of reviving the full Void Lord. This is another big lore reveal, that what really happened was that a sect of ethereals, not yet ethereals, really destroyed Karesh in this last desperate bid to destroy him. My ethereal making friend, he was in favor of this because he was doing this exactly the same way, but he was doing something similar where the ethereals were responsible for destroying Karesh. And I don't hate it, I don't mind it. How it gives us more detail, and it gives us some actual nuance to this, except the Xal'atath parts. It gives us some more nuance to the story because they are well-intentioned extremists. They had to do something terrible for the greater good, and I like. I like the idea that it gives more nuance to these characters. And the friend was planning on something similar. Therefore, we are mostly satisfied with this part, except Xal'atath becoming dumb evil. Now, these are really big spoilers for the upcoming story. But Xal'atath works with us in a temporary alliance to defeat Dimensions, who she knows will kill her for her betrayal. Xal'atath also seems to suggest she doesn't want to destroy Azeroth, but wants something else. She mentions if Dimensions manifests, then Azeroth will be his first stop and he will destroy the planet. It's made very clear, though, that nobody trusts Xal'atath, and they all expect her to betray them the second that Dimensions is dead, which she definitely will do. They know she will prioritize her survival, though, so will fight Dimensions. Throughout the questline, you see her manipulate everyone she can. She turns the oracles to allies by letting them hear Karesh still lives. Dimensions was stopped before he could complete his meal. She is clearly manipulating you, the player, sowing seeds against Venari and Locus-Walker. She breaks the trust between Locus-Walker and Alyria by revealing the Ravel's actions. And just as we go into the raid, she has a cutscene where she gives a big smug smirk like everything went according to plan. Yeah, this is the big story, the big main story. What happens in the raid is basically Salhadar is basically almost succeeding. We kill Salhadar, and then Dimensions manifest in this huge form that is like someone measured. The model in the game is literally kilometers across, literally miles across. This model it's much bigger than Dalaran. It's much bigger than whole cities, and we're supposed to fight that. We're supposed to kill that. Like, how crazy powerful are we getting in World of Warcraft? You know, like I'm not going to say that I prefer the lower stakes stories. That I prefer us to be just the footmen killing like dwarf kings and the Orcish war chief. I will not say that because I do like my cosmic stories. I do like the idea of fighting against something insurmountably bigger than you, like fighting some cosmic forces that look impossible, but despite against the odds, against something that should be impossible, you still win. I like that idea. But it's still that the Dimensions is like the size of a city. It's literally bigger than a city. Like, how many times do I have to hit him with the sword to kill him? I hope it's not just that we have to get something to help defeat him. It's not just, just run up to him and just stab him a lot. That what I do in my game when we have to fight against something really huge is that we usually get either some sort of help, some sort of empowerment, or some sort of tool to handle the really huge thing. Like, what were we doing with Talogris? With Talogris, we weren't really doing something special, except for Locus-Walker being there with us when we were fighting Talogris, the Titan. And it wasn't like full Titan, it was like a tiny sliver of the world, of the power of the world soul, but it was still huge. And Locus-Walker was with us, and he was working slowly in the back on this ritual to bind Talogris, to knock him down. And we only had to survive long enough and protect Locus-Walker while Talogris, because it was that huge. Talogris was that powerful that we couldn't really properly fight it to the end. And in the end, we actually almost killed it, because maybe I do need to work on some more balance in the system. But that's not the point. The point is, I like the idea of fighting against insurmountable odds, but also when you're fighting against something that huge, I like the idea that you need some help, some external help to like weaken it or slow it down, or sometimes the goal is just to survive. So I don't terribly mind this whole plotline. I definitely do like that Xal'atath is being very two-faced. Like, she's kind of helping us, but she's clearly not being like redeemed or turned into a good guy. I like that Xal'atath is being very, how to say it, Xal'atath is a very nuanced character here again. Like she cares about her survival first and foremost, and she will work with us to achieve those goals and to defeat our common enemy. This is the part I like. And now these are some additional things. The main quest line is about trying to stop the Shadow Guard from reviving Dimensions, gathering the rest she wraps. So Xal'atath can alter everyone to withstand his presence and enter the raid. That is tied to what I said earlier. I will not comment too much about this. The Demon Hunter boss is tied to a side quest. Demon Hunter wants to learn... A reveal someone found that there was this like Void Elf Demon Hunter, and Wowhead was saying that it's clearly proof that we are going to get a new spec for Demon Hunters. Usually when they say something like that, they are right, because they have like actually have sources inside Blizzard. Like I used to have some friends inside Blizzard. Then one of them got outed for his conduct, and I don't like to talk about that. One of them, two of them remained, but had to shut off like social media because there were some crazy people harassing them, and they had to shut down the social media. Blizzard made a whole big mess about it, as most of the Blizzard people had to shut off their social media because they wanted to better control what is being said. So I kind of lost most of the contacts I had in Blizzard, but Wowhead still has a lot of people who... So if Wowhead drops like a headline that says like, this might lead to a new spec for Demon Hunters, that probably means we're going to get a new spec for Demon Hunters. But my first thought upon seeing those would be to just get Void Elf Demon Hunters in the future, and maybe like Nightborn Demon Hunters. That would be very nice. Demon Hunters should really be extended to more races, and to people who are crying, oh, that makes no sense in the lore to have like Orc Demon Hunters. It makes perfect sense. Like there's no real reason why an Orc or a Fel Orc couldn't become a Demon Hunter. Like people say only elves can withstand the pain of becoming a Demon Hunter. What is so special about being an elf that makes you more resistant to pain? Like nothing. Like, why does being an elf makes you specifically more resistant to the pain of becoming a demon hunter? Like, it's just something that it was said in the lore that people just accept it without questioning what it means. There really should be more races for the demon hunters, at the very least for the races that actually took part in the Demon Hunter like plot lines. So like Draenei or Broken Draenei, if we finally had Broken Draenei, Orcs, Void Elf Demon Hunters could easily just be a Blood Elf Demon Hunter who then went with Umbric's sect, and then he got transformed into a Void Elf. That's as little explanation as you need for a Void Elf Demon Hunter. Nightborn Demon Hunter could easily be just neophytes. Like new people who are being inducted into the order, because there are still demons to hunt, so the demon hunters will still induct new people, and there are already Nightborn who fight like demon hunters. So there's no reason to not let them become new demon hunters. So we really should have more races for demon hunters, and for many other classes we really should have more races available to those classes. And there is a whole quest line on Karesh. I think it's a boss in the raid on Karesh, the boss that Void Elf Demon Hunter, because he thinks he can control the Demon Hunter things, and then of course it goes wrong, and then now he's serving the Void, and so on and so on. yeah, the demon hunter is too arrogant and basically gets overtaken by the void rather than controlling it. That's one of these side quests that you are dealing with, side plots that you are dealing with in Karesh. Is there anything else that I had here? This is the myth that I found, and there is some technobabble. I like technobabble because I just like reading the stuff that sounds like this very technical about things that are very not real. There's about one of those books is about an ethereal who was following the champions of Azeroth, and he was like, some of these people don't even have like magic powers. They just come at people with swords and still kill like powerful godlike entities. How does this work? It's very surprised. I like that part, but also there are some like new lore revelations that are in this very technobabble kind of book by Technomancer Omretian. I just have a screenshot of this. Multiversal Energy Dynamics and the something because the title cuts off on the screenshot. And it talks about like a theory that ranks the planes of existence into higher and lower energy states. Details the pathways between them and explains the recently discovered phenomena of untethered space. It doesn't really explain the untethered space, but from the whole text I get the impression like it's supposed to be this like space, non-space dimension outside of the cosmic dimensions, the space in between, like Azeroth and in between the cosmic realms. This raw chaotic creatia, to use an Elder Scrolls term, that sits between the planes. And I also had like a similar idea in my reboot. It is not just in my reboot, this is just a general idea that I had for a long time, there is this like unformed, undifferentiated like stuff outside of the main dimensions, and if people go there and their minds can start shaping this space into new realms, new dimensions. That's how you get like pocket dimensions, where like some mages make their towers in a pocket dimension. They just go into this non-space outside of space, and they make their own like bubble of a dimension, or like a whole new realms can be shaped. New cosmic forces can be shaped with enough. If you have a unique concept that isn't represented by cosmic force, and you go to this non-space and you shape it with your mind, you can create a whole new cosmic force. It's something that happened in our reboot, and I created this like virtual reality, this virtual space that isn't actually virtual, but it uses the ideas of technology. It uses these ideas of technology and creates this like space for like these technological spirits, machine spirits. It's something that is like this rising plotline in the background that maybe could be something more in the future, but that is beside the point. So that is basically all the major reveals that I have found so far about Karesh recently. And I have been talking for over 40 minutes by now. Probably there's no one watching by now still, but you know, it's a bit of a mixed bag. I mostly like some of the big bits, and I dislike some of the smaller bits. So I don't terribly mind what they're doing to Karesh. What I do mind, Salhadar, 100,000 years, and the whole of wasting Karesh in like one patch. Those are the really big things. I don't know if I can cut this video down to more reasonable size, or if anyone will watch 40 minutes of it, 45 minutes of it. But if you do want to hear some spoilers about Karesh and what I've done with Karesh, what my friend has done with Karesh, then I hope you have been listening until now. And if you did listen until the end, in the comments below, write Right, well, what would make sense, what wouldn't make sense would look weird in the comments. Write in the comments, I'm here for the random chaotic ramblings. And that's what they do, isn't it? Well, write that in the comments if you have been here to the very end. And I hope to see you next time, maybe in more Let's Play videos, maybe in more world building videos soon. I hope to see you next time, and goodbye.